Hello everyone, very good morning. And the objective of the first two sessions are to as a kind of warm-up session. Some of the concepts, the topics I'm going to cover here, uh, some of them you may be knowing well, maybe much better than me, and not sure that each and everyone or every one of you will be knowing that. And plus, I rely on the memory part. You might have forgotten, so I forget so many things. So you're all on one page. So keeping that in mind, I will cover some basic concepts, and I organize my talk in this way. First, I will talk about food expenditure in Indian household budget, and then I'll move to understanding inflation because that's a widely talked topic. And then I will link this one with understanding nutrition. Coming to the first part, when we talk about food expenditure, it has much to do with the economic progress of a country as well. Because one of the celebrated law, again, you might have heard it several times, Angel's law. So what does it mean that when economy grows, the proportionate share of food expenditure in the household budget that declines, and the absolute expenditure after adjusting for inflation, it will go up. Then I'm showing you some empirical data for India over time and using from NSSO Consumer Expenditure Survey. So as per this theoretical prediction, what we should be expecting that it should be going down, but you can see there separately for rural and urban is not declining. But overall, if you draw a linear line without if ignore all the years, then you will be seeing that yes, is showing a trend that the declining food expenditure. That's a positive sign of economic prosperity. But you can see, for example, in year 2009-10 data, actually the household budget share has increased. It's not because economy was not growing. Economy has been growing in a regular pace, but the food inflation shock that hit the country in 2007-8, that caused actually the household budget to the proportion to increase. So why I'm bringing this one, that these are the some of the sometimes some kind of shock, maybe this is a macroeconomic shock. And inflation, you may know, is actually a fact determined by so many factors, some of them production side, supply side, demand side, etc. um, some more, just if I move before moving further, when a household is that struggling to meet end, so this is the one of the basic things. And people, even they are pressed with the household that a budget constraint. This is the area they compromise as well, because other essentials, other necessities of life, sometimes they don't want to compromise, but here they compromise, but maybe in quantity instead in terms of quality they may compromise. And before moving some more insights, suppose since I am talking about economic prosperity, and one of the indicator when we talk about economic hardship or recession or depression, economic recession, so some of the normal indicator is that normally National Bureau of Economic Research, they announce that okay, the country is ongoing a recession, but it takes time, more 2 3 4 years sometime it takes by the time recession will be over when they officially announce. But one of the unconventional tool that we use, the garbage index, that means garbage index means the municipality at that area, when they weigh the garbage that they're getting, if economic hardship is there, the garbage collection that will come down, that means the food wastage, it will come down. That means at that time people will, the way they allocate their household, that food budget, the way they consume food, that they will be more meticulous. So just an unconventional index, we often use it. Moving further, okay, this is the area I want to highlight. So one of the things which I mentioned in the previous slide, that the inflation, food inflation is one of the pressing concerns. So when we understand inflation, normally we look from both demand side and supply side. This is an economics problem. Normally they always try to think from supply side and demand side. So on the here when we understand food inflation, almost same but little bit we give on the supply side. We talk more about the cost push inflation. That means the input cost increasing and the raw material cost increasing, then the supply chain disruptions, plus the recent issues of the climate change and climate shock, flood and drought. This kind of issues we often relate with the food insecurity. Because the reason is that it's not that all the food it comes to the market, because sometimes the subsistence agriculture harvest cultivation that also come in the picture. So the uh, climate shock is also going to be a part of inflation. Then this part I won't stress much. This is a little bit economic part, that the demand side, the growing demand for food. But the way we predicted that the food demand is not growing in that way, because the thing is that when our income increases, we actually the budget absolute amount it increases, but overall it won't be increasing. But the thing is that the second point I mentioned, there is the pressing demand from other sectors. For example, food has been used as a biofuel, and even fish also, that the demand is not only for consumption purpose, human consumption, but for other purpose also. So that will put a pressure on inflation. So since I talked about inflation, I just thought that I will touch upon this concept. So this is what we normally teach in the class, so that I'm determined more in a comfort zone. So normally inflation means it's a simple formula that we talk about the price level instead of price of any particular commodity. So we calculate, create a price level at a macroeconomic level. Then we see how price increase. Then we just compare the previous period. What is the rate of change? When we say 5%, we are just comparing with previous period. So what I am going to do here is that I'm just trying to connect this one to the Indian context, how we relate in Indian situation. So one of the main measure that we use as a measure of inflation in India is consumer price index. So consumer price index means it measures the cost of buying a fixed basket of goods and services, uh, representative of the purchases of consumers separately for rural and urban, and also we do it separately for each and every state, like the 28 states and UT we calculate separately. The basic methodology behind this, what the labor ministry does is that they survey consumers, the representative sample of consumers, to determine the composition of a typical consumer basket. Then every month collect data on prices of all items in the basket, then compute the cost of basket. Then simply we see, in order to purchase that, what is the change in prices, same basket over period of time, what the the cost of this basket, that we convert and say that that is the consumer price index. That's the basic intuition behind it. If I just elaborate this concept by using only two commodity, because we have nearly 300 this many number of food items, so it's difficult to bring everything here. Suppose assume that a typical consumer buys only 20 apples and 10 oranges. Then what we do that, for in order to buy that over period of time, what is that same basket, how much it costs, so that we take as one of the year we take as the base year, then we calculate the change in the cost of buying this item. So if I just illustrate using a table, just I put the quantity same, that the 20 apples and 10 oranges, and I just use the 2000 as the base year. Then I deliberately change the price, that in nominal terms, that the 2001, 2002, 2003, and then I calculate the cost of basket. The cost of basket is, so this is the cost of basket. Then we calculate from that, using this formula, we can calculate consumer price index. And sometimes people get often confused when they interpret consumer price index. Even our regular student, economic student, also get confused. What we need to that, we shouldn't interpret CPI directly. That means, for example, the 2000 to 2000, you know that 2001 you can say inflation is 5.7 because we have a base. But further that you shouldn't take direct comparison. Instead, you should take just the previous year compared to previous CPI, how it came to the next year. So if I translate this one in the further formula, is going to be like this. The first year is 5.7, fine, straight calculation from 100. But afterwards, you shouldn't directly compare. You should use previous year. For example, 2002, if you want to see what's the inflation, you should take 2001 as the base, that CPI as the base, then you use 2002 CPI, then you make the calculation, then you get the inflation. So this is the way in India we calculate inflation. um, this actually sometimes some more doubts comes whether, because I talked about a fixed basket in a particular period of time, but you know that over time basket is changing, but not necessary that, because what we are interesting, we are not interested to compare today's inflation almost 20-30 years before, because at that time the basket items are different, quantities different, qualities different, and we cannot compare. But what we are looking that we do compare over time. Over time we make some quality adjustment. In addition to that, even if you want to take this year, you can take either of the year as the basket. You don't need actually a basket. But to 2023 or 24, either of the year, the quantity you can take, then the price only you need to change. So you can do that as well. So coming to Indian reality, this is the way we do. We number of items in the CPA basket, we have 448 in rural and 460 in urban area. And then what we do that, because since there are large number of basket items, we attach weightage. For example, the food and beverages, the in the CPI, it comes 54.18% the weightage. So it's based on the consumption in a household budget, how much they spend, accordingly this weightage is determined. And some more concept we use, we also introduce one more concept called core inflation. Core inflation and the general inflation. The core inflation means the non-volatile component. For example, food expenditure, food inflation is the most volatile. You know that is fluctuate over time, shocks and all. So we distinguish this from avoid this volatile, the food and fuel item. When we exclude this one, the remaining one is called core inflation. For an economics perspective, because we need some mild inflation for economic growth, because zero inflation is not a welcome phenomenon at all. So in that way we rely more on core inflation, not on the full CPI. So we take out the food and fuel, and the remaining one is called the core inflation. When I talk about food inflation, sometimes we see that yeah, we have inflation here. So always people have the feeling that inflation is a bad thing. But from an economics perspective, a mild inflation is a welcome phenomenon. We need inflation. Without inflation, the economy won't move ahead at all. So keeping this in mind, so the Reserve Bank of India Monetary Policy Committee, the government of India gave a mandate to the RBI or MPC. That means the inflation targeting is 4 plus or minus 2%. That the upper level, the tolerance level, lower level is you need to ensure minimum 2% of inflation, and the maximum you cannot go beyond 6%. So as long as the inflation is between 2% and 6%, government of India won't intervene in the RBI's normal monetary policy. If it either of it cross the limit at the bottom or upper, then the government can directly intervene and say that you need to fix the price level. So till 2026, we in the beginning when we started it in 2016, we retained this inflation target, and now 2026 also we extended. Then based on that, international standard may be making, but most probably I think they're going to stick to this. So one of the concern, this is a little bit debating. Even when I teach this concept in the classroom, sometimes they ask lots of questions. Suppose when you talk about food inflation, Suppose you talk one particular commodity, for example, rice. How are you going to express this as inflation? Because in the column here, what I say that price of rice per kilo in current price, the nominal price, I just put it here. So one practice you can directly report it because we are talking about their inflation. You can say the rate of change, take one of the year as the base year, fine. But if you think from a macroeconomic perspective, economy as a whole, the aggregate level, so because we need mild inflation is required actually. Because basic again economic theory that if you double the money supply, theoretical prediction is that price level also will double. Empirically it won't, but so in case Reserve Bank asks the commercial bank that you inject more money or increase the liquidity in the banking system, the general public, definitely inflation is going to increase, right? So in that way, it's going to affect all other key economic variables, including wage and the sales of the company. Everything is going to affect. So one practice is that when you are deflating, instead of taking on price, for example, rice, instead of taking rice on price, what you need to do that you need to deflate with the core inflation, core CPI. And many research articles they use this practice. Instead of they cancel out the core inflation part, then what is the net inflation that we consider as really food inflation? Because otherwise at the level when there is an inflation, all other economic variables will be moving simultaneously, but then we take this practice. But it's all up to you. If you want to take the same commodity price also, you can do, as long as you can justify. But many researchers, when we published a paper, we have to take CPI, we have to deflate the food price with the CPI. This is the way we do. And then when we convert this one into a diagram graph, you can see that the blue one is in the own price, and when I deflated it, you can see the orange line. So that we deflate with the CPI. And if you do that, you should be well clear to defend it. You should be able to explain clearly that this is the reason I am using it. Moving further, okay, this is we did for one of the paper published in 2012 when studying the food inflation impact of in India. We took Andhra Pradesh as a case study, so we did the calculate the price that inflation food inflation and deflated with, after deflating with the CPI, still we got the prices increasing. Coming to measuring food inflation, one more thing. Suppose if you want to calculate food inflation here, because CPI give the consumer basket, but suppose if you want to do a calculation for all India, for separate state and different household, for different socio-economic category household, one of the best sources consumer expenditure survey. So in the consumer expenditure survey, they talked about the total quantity and in numerical terms, the quantity as well as the total expenditure. So by dividing the total expenditure by the quantity, you are directly going to get the price, and that each and every household paying. Maybe even the price also, you know that their own negotiation is there, the quality of items are there, so that you will get the price. Self-report bias is there that we accept. Apart from that, you will be getting each household how much price they are paying. So there further what you can do that you can categorize into different food items, and then you can weight it. Weight with the in software you can do the calculation. Weighting is your scores are available. You can weight by consumption. Then you can see what the weighted price for example cereals, pulses, vegetables, fruits, etc. Even separately for each and every household in the country. Now I'm a little bit trying to relate this one to the macronutrient part from the same consumer expenditure survey. This is actually what the policymakers have been doing, government has been doing over time. You may know that long back, historically, since independence, we have been using how we define poverty. At that time, we have been defining poverty as absolute poverty, and it's mainly poverty means synonymous to food insecurity. That means at that time we have been using somebody cannot consume per consumer unit, if they cannot consume in the rural area 2400 calories per day, and similarly for urban area also that 2100 calories, if they are not purchasing, those who are not spending that much, they are below poverty line. But now you know that poverty is not absolute poverty, is relative poverty. So there are so many other items, the household items, so many other items included, but still in some of the policy discussion we still use this traditional or conventional concept framework. Some more here, one more thing, when you take, because the NSSO consumer expenditure they give as a household level, they don't give you individual level food consumption. They what they're buying. Our assumption here is that whatever they're buying, they're consuming. Of course, there are leakages, cattle are there, and something they will be giving. There are some adjustment mechanisms are there. So this one, instead of making a per capita food consumption, the most widely used concept is called per capita consumer unit. For example, a newborn, how much food the person needs, and how much a 20-25 age group person needs. Obviously, you know that those who are young, they need more food, that their calorie requirement is more. So accordingly, they are giving more weightage there. You can see that separately for male and female, there is a difference is there. So accordingly, this one is given by the government of India. This is the weightage already arrived at the policy document. And then we, instead of making just a per capita consumption, you need to multiply with this consumer unit. Then you will come to know that for each and every household, what is their per consumer unit food consumption. Further, you might have, I already used the term that we are using calorie, that is the minimum required calorie. So government of India, we use, government, all of us, the researchers also use ICMR table of macronutrient. So by Gopalan, who is the ICMR Director General, he developed this table. That means each and every food items, they already calculated based on the thorough research the calorie content, the protein content, the fat content from each items. There are all the items. I am only giving only a sample this one. If you look at the document, is already publicly available. What I do that I calculated this one. I extracted using putting everything in an Excel and feeding in the Stata software. Then we can calculate from the NSSO consumer expenditure what is the calorie per consumer unit. Then what is the protein and what is the fat content for each and every food items you can do, and from that you will get each and every household socio-economic category wise. You can see what the trend in macronutrient consumption. Then some of the further translation of food insecurity, that the food consumption and nutrient, Jasmine already touched these basic concepts already here. So mainly these are the three concepts that has been widely used to measure child malnutrition. Is there one is called weight for height, that is called wasting, and wasting is considered the main measure of the food insecurity, because this is short term indicator. Malnutrition indicators that if there is a deficiency in food consumption, nutritious food consumption, then the wasting get affected more. So normally we use wasting as an indicator for child nutrition, that the food insecurity in a household. Then we have height for age, standing. Here actually a little bit sanitation aspects comes. And then we have this measure as well, weight for age. Is a composite index that consider both acute and chronic undernutrition. So we can see all these indicators are related, but we normally, when we want to measure the impact of food insecurity, we normally use wasting as the main measure of the translate. But again, we cannot say the malnutrition is because of food insecurity, or because it also depends upon not only the affordability issue, but also the awareness and the knowledge about balanced diet and the timing. These are all the for the research area. I am not touching all this point. Anyway. So I just put everything. We may be sharing the slides. So how you measure this one. So normally we express this one with the WHO reference population. So when we say that our indicator, the Z-score with all this that assessed by weight for height, which we call wasting. If it is minus below 2 standard deviation, we are going to say they are acutely undernourished. So normally we use the -2 below, that's a C value. We use that as the malnutrition indicator for each and every variable. But if you want to know the chronic, acute, severely, then you go for the standard deviation -3. So this point, just I thought of is better to put. I'm not covering more, because households, when any shock, maybe the income shock or price shocks comes, so they need to cope with the consumption. So they adopt lots of consumption smoothing strategies. So one of the thing in our data analysis, what we found that they don't reduce the quantity, they actually the quality the quality wise they adjust. Maybe they go for more cheaper options and less nutritious, maybe more unhealthy food items, because we cannot starve and die, right? So we need to survive. So at that time, they make all these consumption smooth things. So when we understand the food insecurity, we also need to look at these qualitative aspects as well. Thank you very much. Thank you.